Thanks. Thank you, Senator Hawley. We'll begin a second round of questions, and I want to begin where I finished. Let me go to you, Ms. Stout. The information we've been provided by the committee, more or less similar to what we know about Intel and Texas Instruments, Analog Devices audits portions of its export compliance program. You've completed a one-off review of export compliance following Russia's invasion, which identified issues. You did some corrections. Will you commit to doing regular compliance or audits? And I'm not talking about commercial audits. I know that, as my friend, the senator from Wisconsin, has said, there are audits and there are audits. I'm talking about audits of compliance, sales to distributors, and then audits of the distributors and requiring those distributors to do their own audits. Will the company commit to doing that on a regular basis?
Chairman Blumenthal, we are investing in our internal audit team. We have audited our distributors. However, we are committing
on a quarterly basis?
On a quarterly basis, but not 100% of them. So we are committing to investing more in this area and auditing 100% of our distributors.
So you will commit to doing it?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Scurry, will your company commit to doing those kinds of quarterly, regular audits? Our information is that AMD has no program for regular internal audits of your compliance program, company-wide, sales-wide, and that you haven't audited your program since the invasion, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You did inform us yesterday that you intend to conduct a full audit of your programs in 2025. Will you commit to doing regular quarterly audits, compliance with export controls, and requiring your distributors to do the same?
Thank you, Senator. I also noticed in the report that the committee published yesterday that there was no information or very little information about our current audit process for our export control programs. So I would like to share with the committee some of the steps that we do already take. We do, for example, collect on a weekly basis point-of-sale data from our distributors, and we screen and audit that data. We also, on a weekly basis, audit our deemed export logs to make sure that all of our deemed export licenses are in order.
But what is the answer to my question? I know that you submitted additional information. Some of it may not be in the report because the report was done several days ago, and we heard from you yesterday. But will you commit now to doing quarterly audits? I think it's a fairly simple question of your distributors, of their sales, and requiring your distributors to do it as well.
Thank you, Senator. We have committed to performing a complete audit on our export control program in 2025. And
I stated that.
Right.
So, you know, we have limited amounts of time here. So if you have to do what your colleagues have said, take it back under consideration, you know, I recognize you may not have authority to make the commitment, but I'm asking you whether you're willing to make that commitment now. What's your answer?
So for distributors, I will need to take that back and discuss that with my team in terms of what cadence and what percentage that we can do on an annual basis.
So you'll take it back. And what I'd like to ask all of you as well to do, because you probably don't have authority to make this commitment now, but I would like you to respond, let's say within 30 days, will you also commit to an independent assessment of those audits? Let me, Ms. Scurry, come to this point that you made about these chips being old. Has your company sent a team to Ukraine to do as I did and go to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian Armed Forces Weapons Research Institute? That's where the photographs were taken, where Ukrainian military personnel have these arms from the battlefield. Have you sent teams to inspect those weapons?
Thank you, Senator. We're actually having a meeting tomorrow, a phone call with representatives from state, commerce, and I believe the organization that you just mentioned from Ukraine. I believe it's an institute with the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And it's to discuss the testing of chips, whether that happens on the ground in Ukraine or maybe in an embassy in another country. That call is tomorrow, and we've also been invited, I believe, sometime later in September to visit an embassy in another country.
So the
to
war
view
has
the
been
chips.
going on for 2 years. Export sanctions for 2 years. You told this committee just minutes ago that you believe that these computer chips are all old. But your company hasn't sent a team there to inspect them. You haven't taken steps to verify whether that information is correct. That's just your opinion or belief?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to clarify. Since the invasion, we've had a regular cadence of trace requests, is what conflict armament research calls them. They have sent us dozens and dozens of trace requests, and they look a lot like the photographs that you held up at the beginning of the hearing. And they will ask us to use those photographs to research in our records and provide information that we have about date of manufacture and shipment and other things, and we do so. We have thought it would be more helpful if we could see the parts in person and perhaps test them. That has been complicated because of jurisdiction, but it looks like we're making progress and now at the point where we'll be able to have access to the devices.
So the simple answer is you've received a lot of trace requests, but the information to us is you haven't responded to a lot of them, correct?
Senator, we've responded to every single trace request.
But you haven't responded as to whether or not, in fact, they are products from your company.
Senator, we have responded to every trace request that has where the photograph is visible and we can read it and we can trace it. We always provide the information. Sometimes there's products where the numbers have been scratched out or covered up. You can't do anything with those.
And that's the basis for your telling this committee that they're all old parts?
Senator, we have not found one yet that we've been able to trace to a post-sanctions manufacturing date. What I will say is that that could absolutely happen. And what we see in the KSE reporting, for example, or in the new diligence tools that are now on the market, which we have access to, and you can see in the trade data that flows are still happening into Russia. So it's an area that we need to keep an eye
since
on.
my time is limited, I would suggest that you send a team there, that you inspect the weapons that the Ukrainians have. Your phone call tomorrow may lead you to take a little bit more action. I don't mean any disrespect here, but if you are on the ground, I was there. If you talk to President Zelensky and his team, if you go to actually see them and perhaps gather firsthand, not just from trace requests. Let me ask you, Ms. Stout, Analog Devices has received 20 trace requests from just one organization since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. Our information is that you haven't responded to any of them.
I understand your concerns. Actually, just today, had an email exchange with Mr. Damian Spleeters. We are meeting to we are meeting this week, actually on Friday, to determine how we can better
I welcome your
together.
stepping up. Ms. Thompson, Texas Instruments, received 100 trace requests since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and only began to work to respond to them after the subcommittee's February hearing. Did Texas Instruments try to trace components it had received trace requests for when you initially received them?
Yes, so since we began talking with CAR in February, we have been having very active and productive conversations. We have been trying to be as responsive as we can. You have to work through some confidentiality considerations because the tracing involves customer information, because these parts touch many different potential customers as they are sold and resold multiple times. We have always welcomed this information. It's part of our ongoing improvement to get better and understand what is happening out there. How can we better our screening processes and who we shouldn't sell to? But we have a very active conversation with CAR. They've actually expressed their appreciation for our cooperation. And so in terms of responding, we are actively talking with them and working through the lists based on information we have to do the tracing.
Well, I'm glad that you're doing more after our hearings began. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here. We welcome your doing more, but there's a lot more that you can and I think you must do. And to say that the Russians are making these hypersonic missiles, that the Iranians are making their Shahed drones, that the most modern lethal weapons slaughtering Ukrainians are being made with 16-year-old chips? Hard to believe. Mr. Rittner, Intel has not provided any sufficient detail in response to trace requests to adequately follow those weapons. On one occasion, when your company was asked for its help searching the path of a chip, Intel offered a list of all its distributors, which was already available publicly online. I guess Intel couldn't be bothered to search, which is alarming. Are you also upgrading your program to respond to trace requests?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, we have engaged with all three NGOs. We are working, as we speak, with one in particular on some tracing requests. In fact, on another NGO, we spoke with them this morning on the phone. So we are very active currently with these tracing requests.
I apologize, Senator Johnson. I'll yield to you for your question.
I'll follow up on this because I was going to ask if you've all received